Hello, this should be your second part for this assignment. Let's pick another nice and easy one. I'm going to come across to the Pulley Project Facts document I've just downloaded off Blackboard, and let's have a look at P06 bush. We could do this a similar way to how we modelled P02, but let's have a look at another way that we could use the extrude boss feature to create maybe that hole for us from the very beginning. So I'm going to come back to my component here, and I will say File, New, and just create that new part document. Hit OK. And straight off the bat, again, we like to save these so that we know it's working. The name of the file will be P06. I'll just type that in there, and I want to put a description on, the description being bush, short for bushing. A bushing is a lot like a bearing. It's a very simple type of bearing, and it just, it's typically a fairly sacrificial part. It's something that you'll swap over as it wears out, and it's between two moving parts to help, lubricate that motion if it's something like a nylon, as well as just promote it and stop grinding or seizing between different metals. Alright, so that is bushing. I got a little bit confused there. I'll put bushing in the right place, and I'll change this to description. Hit OK. And now let's sketch on our right plane. Right-click right plane. Select sketch. And I'm going to draw one circle, like we did on the first part, and I will dimension that to be 13 millimeters. So let's put a dimension on that. That's smart dimension, and we'll call that 13. And we also want to put that hole through it. So remember on P02 we just drew one outside hole, we extruded it up, and then we cut a hole through. We don't really need to do that. That's more steps than we need. We can actually draw a more of a donut shape in our sketch and tell it just to extrude the outside section of that donut, which is what we're going to do here. Now we also want a hole. There's no dimension about the size of that hole, but again we've got an M10 bolt. Let's assume this bolt is going through the bush, because that's generally how these things work. And we'll just make it a 10 mil hole so that it's big enough to fit that 10 mil bolt. So again, grab a circle. First click is on the origin so that it's nice and locked down. Second click is the outer section of the radius. Select my smart dimension. And then place a 10 mil dimension across that bush. Alright, and now I'm going to hold down the scroll wheel and move my mouse. That allows me to orbit into more of a 3D view. I will now come to Features, Extrude Boss Base, and we should see SolidWorks automatically select that donut shape. It's pretty smart. It can normally guess what we're trying to do. Under Direction 1, I'm going to change to Midplane. Now there's no real reason why that would make the part work. It's not a critical step, but it does make our model a lot nicer in that it keeps our origin nice and centered within our geometry, and that can be quite easy. That can be quite a nice thing later when we go into making assemblies, to have all our planes aligned around the center of a component. Alright, we want to know how wide this is. There's actually no dimension written there. Let's have a look if we've got anything that tells us how wide our pulley is. It looks like the widest point of the pulley, where it's passing through the wheel, is 25 millimeters. Let's assume that's where the bushing's going to go. That's the perfect sort of place for a bushing. So let's make that bushing 25 millimeters wide. And we'll hit the green tick. And there I have the first part of that bushing. So let's see how that's looking. That looks pretty good to me. So let's hit Control S and save. typically on a bushing you'd have a bit of a leading edge as well. It doesn't have it on the drawing, but we could add it ourselves. So if I want to put a leading edge on this, that's something to help locate it into what would normally be a very tight cylindrical surface that it has to locate into. We'd want some kind of a chamfer. So I'm going to come to my fillet feature and I'm going to select chamfer. I'm going to put it to something very low. It probably only needs to be about a 1 millimeter chamfer, and I'm going to apply it to the outside at each end of my bush. So that's fine. 45 degrees will do. Hit the green tick to say that's all fine and okay. Hit save, and there we have a finished bush. Very good. You can move on to your next part.